Hello everybody, and welcome to Library Dissertation Toolbox, Locating Tests and Measurements. My name is Amanda Bezet. I'm a reference and instruction librarian at NCU, and I'm always happy to help you if you do have questions. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me at abezet@ncu.edu. So A for Amanda, and then my last name, Bezet, B as in boy, E-Z-E-T, at ncu.edu. So let's jump right into our presentation today. We're going to go to the Research Help drop-down menu and first navigate to Search Process so we can see what area of the research process corresponds to today's content. Scrolling down on the screen, we do have a section here on the left called Resources for Dissertation Research, and I'm going to click there on the Tests and Measurements Guide. So we're going to stick around here for a few minutes talking about some general considerations about test instruments, but after that we're going to move on to finding test instruments in scholarly journal articles, finding them in other students' dissertation, and then finally finding them in specific library databases which do provide test instruments. So we will take a look at all of that. So on this guide here, as we scroll down, we'll see a general discussion of tests and measurements, which we'll talk about briefly. And then as we scroll down, we'll see some tips for searching for tests and measurements, and then some examples that you'll see here. So our first example is from the Roadrunner Search, which is excellent for finding scholarly articles. And then we have this box, which we are going to work from today on the library databases, listing specific resources that can be helpful for finding instruments. And so, like I said, that's going to be the bulk of our presentation today, actually locating those instruments. But before we do that, we actually have to talk about tests and measurements just a little bit. What are they? What types of resources are there? So your test or measurement is going to be the way that you measure what it is that you are studying in your dissertation. So you're going to be gathering information through the form of these instruments. And so there's two types of tests, essentially. There are published tests or commercial tests. So these tests have been commercially published by publishers, and you must actually purchase them in order to use them. So we talk a little bit about that here. The plus side of using a commercially published test is that they're going to have already established validity, reliability, and norms, and typically come with test manuals and testing protocols. In some cases, however, only qualified or professionally trained individuals can purchase copies of these tests. So sometimes doctoral students are unable to purchase these commercially available products because they want to actually control how they are being used, and they're not appropriate for use in student research. I would say that the majority of students locate unpublished tests. And so it doesn't mean that they're not published anywhere, it just means that they're not commercially published. So non-commercial tests are found in the scholarly literature of any multidisciplinary journals and have been developed by university researchers or other professionals, government agencies, or nonprofit organizations. So these unpublished tests, which are actually published, it's sort of a misnomer, they're found within those published articles. You've probably come across these before in your own research. And so something of note about these tests found in the scholarly literature, sometimes they're included in an appendix, as we point out here. Sometimes they're included in the narrative of the text of that article, specifically in a methodology section, and sometimes the entire instrument is not available, in which case you would have to request that instrument from the researcher. Now, in addition, any test, again, if you purchase one from a commercial publisher, you will have that permission to use it, right? Purchase comes along with that permission. However, if you locate a test or measurement in the scholarly literature, you will have to request permission to use that. The reason for that is it's not a simple attribution of information as you would do if you were citing someone in the literature. You are actually reproducing an entire instrument in your dissertation. It's kind of similar to reproducing data or reproducing an image in your dissertation. You would need permission to use those rather than just regular citations of information. So permissions are needed. You'll display this in your dissertation, one of the appendices in your dissertation. And you can certainly do a Google search for permission letters, but we also have some examples that are listed here within the guide, so you can always take a look at those as well. Essentially, these permission letters are going to address the researcher, ask for permission to use the instrument, so you just want to be very clear about what instrument you are requesting. You'll provide a little bit of information about your proposed study, and then you'll send that via email. Now, typically researchers are very encouraging of doctoral students using their instruments, but there can be challenges here. If the researcher is deceased or there's a question of copyright ownership for that instrument, it may be tricky to obtain that permission. In other cases, researchers just may be swamped and never see your email. So you can always try reaching out again, but you want to have a backup plan in case you do not hear back from that researcher providing permission to use that instrument. The last thing I wanted to touch on, which I'm sure it's linked here somewhere. Let's see on the left-hand side of the screen. Yeah. So on the left-hand side of the screen, we do have a lot of FAQs related to tests and measurements. And you can definitely take a look at these. What is a validated test instrument or survey? Where can I find examples? How do I identify the original source for a test instrument? So this actually can sometimes be tricky, so you can always reach out to the library if you need additional assistance with that. Also, please keep your eye out for posted tests and measurements office hours. I typically provide that once a month, and it's a 2-hour block where you can come and ask your specific questions about locating test instruments. Okay, so we talked about the types of instruments, the commercially published and the non-commercially published. There's some other considerations that we need to think about going forward as we're preparing and searching for our test instruments. And the first thing I want to mention is that this step in the dissertation process can be quite challenging. And the reason for that is that there's not one single research methodology or a single resource for locating test instruments. So every once in a while we'll have a student say, oh, which database do I use, or what resource do I go to find my test instrument? As if there's a single source. And wouldn't that be nice? That would make your life a lot easier, right? But unfortunately, you're going to have to use a variety of search techniques and a variety of resources probably to pin down that instrument that's appropriate for your dissertation. And so it is best sometimes to keep your searches broader, especially as we're, let me scroll down here, as we're looking in some of these more targeted databases for instruments, we may need to be a little bit broader. As I already mentioned before, if you identify a particular test or measure but are unable to locate the original source or the full text, certainly don't hesitate to reach out to the library for additional assistance. And we've already talked about the considerations with obtaining that permission. So with that, I'll start with this Roadrunner search box. You can always refer back to it, but the reason why I like to start with the Roadrunner search is that often the most common way to discover test instruments relevant to your research is by reading the methods section in peer-reviewed journal articles. And Roadrunner is a great starting point for you. And again, I mentioned you've probably already seen instruments that may or may not be appropriate for your research. As you're doing that research, naturally you're coming across those. But If you're having challenges finding an instrument, there are techniques that you can use to help pinpoint those. So we're starting here with the Roadrunner Search, and I'm going to click on the Advanced Search. And let's say our topic of communication is, our topic of our dissertation is communication in virtual teams. So that's our topic. And we're not quite sure what type of instrument we're going to use to measure that communication in our virtual team. In other words, we don't know yet if we're doing an interview. We don't know yet if we're doing a survey. So if that's the case, you're going to want to proceed with typing in your topic keywords. So I'll go with communication in virtual teams. And on the last line, that's where we can add in terms related to the instrument. So if you know for certain, oh, I'm absolutely doing a survey, go ahead and put that in. But if you're not sure, you can go ahead and choose even maybe one of these auto suggestions here. So I'll choose survey or questionnaire or instrument or measure. I'm going to take out the word measure just because it's commonly used as a verb. I'll leave in assessment. I'll leave in scale. I also want to tidy this up. So I'm going to open my parentheses here to create this as my nested search. This is a way to ensure that the database chooses one of the terms within the parentheses while also allowing you to continue to build onto your search if you would like to do that. So we have here survey or questionnaire or instrument or assessment. I'm going to take that out as well, just because when we talk about assessing something, it's not necessarily always with an instrument. So I'm going to take that out, even though that was in the auto suggestion. We'll go with survey or questionnaire or instrument or scale, or let's say we're interested maybe in a focus group. I'll use that as an exact phrase, or let's say an interview. Maybe we're considering interviewing members of virtual teams. So I have all of that information in there. Before I press search, I'm going to insist that communication appear in the abstract and virtual teams in the abstract, so I know that I'm very much focused on that topic. Typically, I would not recommend to you that you put the instrument component in the abstract, because what if the researcher does not put that in the abstract? It's certainly in their methodology section, but maybe they don't mention the instrument in the abstract. So I don't recommend doing the AB abstract for the instrument part. However, I am doing it today for the purposes of demonstration so we can quickly and more easily scan through to identify potential test instruments. I'm also going to put on my scholarly and peer-reviewed journal limiter, and I will not put a date limiter. Remember, test instruments may go back decades or even further back. And with that, if they've been in use that long, maybe they are more reliable anyhow. So we don't want to limit ourselves by a date here. And so we're going to press search. And that whole time I didn't realize I had a typo, but I'm going to fix that now. You're probably sitting there thinking, fix that, but we got it now. So let's update our search here. Okay, so we have 287 results, and so I can start scrolling through and seeing what instruments were used. So this one's talking about other studies, so I'm not sure. This is a systematic literature review, so that means this author did not conduct their own research. They're looking at the research of others. In this next one, they did semi-structured interviews, so we would need to go into that actual article to take a look at those interviews. Scrolling down, they did a survey of global project workers. And we'll go into one of these as an example too. Let's see. Just taking a look here. Mixed methods were used to analyze data obtained from 104 responses to an online survey. And this one is using the virtual team survey. That sounds pretty interesting to me, so I'm going to pop into that one and see if we can actually discover the full text for that instrument. Again, remember, in the scholarly literature, it may not appear in the full text, or it may appear in narrative format where you sort of have to read through the methodology or results to find that. So let's scroll down here. We have a methods section, quantitative methods, and then it says participants responded to 65 items from the virtual team survey. So already we know that Lori is the original author for the virtual team survey. We should be able to see that original source at the end of this paper and the references list. And they respond on a 6-point Likert scale from entirely agree to entirely disagree. So now we're looking for that actual instrument. So let's scroll down here. Sometimes they'll give examples, especially if there are 65 responses that they're expecting from people. They may not necessarily list them all in their full article. Articles usually have word limits for publication, so sometimes that will have to be cut out. But I'm going to keep looking here to see if maybe it's included as an appendix at the end of the article. Okay. So let's keep going here. There's the discussion, limitations of the survey, conclusion, and the references. So I didn't see offhand, but that was just a quick scan through of those 65 questions that they asked people to agree with on that 6-point Likert scale. So obviously you would do a more thorough investigation of this article. If it simply is not there, you definitely want to refer to that original source anyhow. So you can probably take a look at that original researcher's source to try to find that full text. And then worst case scenario, you do have to reach out to someone, and typically email addresses are provided for those researchers. Okay, so that was just an example from our search here. Using those words to represent the instrument part is really what's going to help you focus on finding that instrument in the scholarly literature. We can also do a similar search in Google Scholar. So I'm going to open up a window for Google Scholar. This is an excellent supplement to the Roadrunner Search because while the Roadrunner Search, we aim to provide you with the bulk of your scholarly literature, we don't necessarily include open access resources. Google Scholar does include open access resources, which can be highly valuable. So let's go ahead and do an advanced search, which they hide here on that left-hand menu. And we'll stick with our same topic, right? We're looking for communication, and we're looking for communication as it relates to virtual teams. And we're looking for any type of instrument, survey, questionnaire, instrument, scale, focus group. So very similar to how we structured our search in our Roadrunner search. Kind of not as sophisticated, right? We just have this simple pop-up box for advanced search, but we can make it work to our advantage. So we want all of the words communication, the exact phrase virtual teams, and then at least one of the words, and then these are words representing our instrument. And we can press search. If you have not linked the Google Scholar to the NCU library, that's a really handy way to quickly find research if it is not available online. Perhaps we have that in the library, such as the case of this one. So let's see. This one does not have an open access link online, nor does this one. If you go to this menu here, and by the way, there is an FAQ on this in the library, and we go to our settings here, we can click on library links. Let's see. Library links, and then we'll type in North Central or North Central University and press search. And we want to select North Central University, full text at NCU, and click Save. When I do that, it's pulling in those full text links to articles in the library. And guess what? We can access this one. We can access this one. So that filled in those missing full text pieces here within our search results. Okay, so you would just have to then jump into the full text to investigate what that instrument is and if it's appropriate for use in your academic research. All right, so we've seen how to locate instruments in the scholarly literature using Roadrunner Search and Google Scholar. The next thing I want to do is we'll go back to our test and measurements guide here. I want to next go into Proquest Dissertations and Theses. And the reason why I like to go here next is because it's a very effective way to locate test instruments. A similar study, a student's dissertation, may have employed a relevant test or measurement. You can check the dissertation abstracts to see if the author mentions administering or designing a measurement tool. And the real bonus with finding an instrument through Proquest Dissertations and Theses is that doctoral students will have to include the entire instrument in their appendix, one of their appendices. So you'll always, well, I say always, but you should always be able to find the full text instrument through Proquest Dissertations and Theses if a student has used that instrument. So let's give it a try here. I'm going to go into the global version. The global version brings together over 3 million dissertations from all over the world. So if you are looking for an instrument appropriate for your dissertation, you don't want to limit yourself just to NCU dissertations. Going back here, you can look at NCU dissertations, especially for formatting, but we want to open ourselves up to all possibilities. So we're going to look at the global version. And so I'm going to look for communication. I'm going to put that in the title of the dissertation. And I'm also going to look for virtual teams. And I'm going to put that in the title of the dissertation. I don't actually need to add a row here for instrument words because we already know these are dissertation studies for the most part. There are some master's theses. But we don't need to specify that there be an instrument because there will be an instrument, right, for the most part. So let's scroll down, and what we can do to help ensure that there is an instrument is choose doctoral dissertations because master's theses are less likely to have actually used an instrument. And then let's go ahead and press search here. Okay, we have our search results. We have 39, but we're not looking for hundreds or thousands of dissertations, right? We want to see some examples of other instruments that students have used related to our own research topic. And we are sorting by relevance here, but let's say we wanted to see the most recent dissertation first. We can do that, and surprise, surprise, the most recent is from North Central University, which is so cool. And so let's go into the abstract and details for this dissertation. And we can dismiss this. It's just linking you to some tutorial modules. So we'll dismiss that. And then we can click More to find out more about this study. So it looks like they use a qualitative single case study. Team leaders were invited into a Zoom conference focus group and then followed by a one-on-one interview. So they use both interviews and focus groups here. So let's go into our full text PDF for this dissertation so we can see how that is displayed, and I'll go ahead and download that so we can open that up a little bit bigger here. And of course, dissertations are huge documents, so it may take a moment to load. This one has over 200 pages. So I'm going to actually just scroll down to the bottom of this dissertation and sort of wait for it to load while scrolling up, because that is where we're going to see the appendices, right? Those are after the references. So let's go back up and we'll see what these are. So Appendix B is the Global Virtual Team Communication and Trust One-on-One Interview Guide. So that includes all of the interview questions here. Now, something to think about is, did this student create this interview and the guide and the questions themselves, or did they use it from another researcher? There may be times when your dissertation chair says, you can't use an instrument that another student developed, right? You're going to want it to use an instrument that's established in that scholarly literature that another researcher who has published has used. But most dissertation students don't create their own, but it is possible for you to create your own. If you create your own set of, in this case, interview questions, you will need to pilot those interview questions, which is sort of like a mini study within your dissertation. So that is something you'll discuss with your chair. It is preferred that you find an existing set of questions to use from the scholarly literature or commercial publications that would be appropriate for you. But here's everything, all of the questions that they asked, including those demographic questions. So again, that's the benefit of using dissertations to find that, and you would just need to look at their references to see who originally developed those questions and go back to those original sources. Again, if you're struggling with that, that's certainly something the library can assist with. So now that we've seen how to find instruments in the scholarly literature and in other students' dissertations, we can go back to our guide and start talking about some of these additional targeted databases for test instruments. These vary. Many of them focus more on psychology, but there's a lot of overlap with other social sciences. And there are others that are focused specifically on education, these two, ERIC and ETS. We'll talk about the others. I did get a question recently, which one is good for business? There is no targeted business database for test instruments. So I would say that in those cases, Roadrunner Search and Google Scholar are probably going to be your best starting points, and not so much these library databases. But even when we're talking about APA Psych articles or APA Psych info, I'll just click into APA Psych articles. Remember, there is overlap with the other social sciences, so there is going to be this may actually result in a test instrument for the business field as well. Right? So an interesting thing about APA Psych articles is that you can actually go to the advanced search, and if you are already aware of a specific test instrument that you are interested in using, there is a specific tests and measurements field, tests and measures field. This is super unique among databases. There's this tests and measures field which allows you to put in the name of that test instrument that you are considering to see all of the other articles that have used that instrument. So we're going to go that route first. We can always do a keyword search at the top like we did in Roadrunner, but I wanted to show you specifically how to use this field. So let's just say that we know that we are interested in, let's see, the Clark-Beck Obsessive Compulsive Inventory. So we'll type that in there, Clark-Beck Obsessive Compulsive Inventory. We don't need to put anything up here at the top of our search. We're only looking for articles that use that instrument. I'm going to press search. So we have only 2 results here. What I would recommend doing actually is what we can do is go up to choose databases, and we can actually choose Psych Info in conjunction with Psych articles. They are both providing scholarly literature related to psychology and related fields. So a good way to do it is to to search them simultaneously. And so we'll go back to that advanced search. Usually it retains our search terms. Let's double check and see. It has not, so let's go ahead and type that in again. Clark Beck, obsessive compulsive inventory, and we'll see if this gives us a little bit more literature. So we can see that now we have 27 results. So most of them are in the psych info side of things here. Let's go ahead and click on our first result because I want to show you that specific field for the tests and measures. So we're on our detailed records screen. If we scroll down, we have this tests and measures field. So the Clark Beck Obsessive Compulsive Inventory Spanish version was used along with all of these other instruments. And if we have a full text record for that, we should be able to link out using that DOI. So this is going to provide you with that full text article as well. This one was available in full text, so you can jump into the article to learn more about the article and how they use that instrument. But keep this in mind. We can also, I'll go back to a new search here. And so outside of using that specific test and measures field, if I were just interested in, again, finding something on communication and virtual teams, I'll type that in. Again, I don't need my instrumentation here because remember that field is going to identify for you if an instrument was used. And this looks like they're pulling in dissertations and theses, so I'm going to choose academic journals, even though we know the value of finding instruments and dissertations. And then let's go ahead and click on one of these. So global virtual team communication, coordination, and performance. When I scroll down here, I'm looking for that tests and measures field, and they use the communication frequency measure and the process coordination measure. Okay, so that's a great way to identify your instruments in APA psych articles. So again, overlap with other social sciences, but mainly focus on psychology and related fields. All right, we will go back to our guide itself, and then we're going to talk about APA psych tests. This is a very unique database, and it provides a repository of open access psychological tests. And what that means is that most of these tests have been cleared for use in academic research, meaning you don't have to request permissions here. So I'll click on Advanced Search, as we do most times, and we'll do communication, and we'll do virtual teams, and I'm just going to press search. We're already searching a psychological tests database. We don't need those terms relating to the test or instrument or scale. Now, if we knew for sure we were doing a survey, I'd say, oh yeah, let's pop that in there too. So we'll pop in survey, and that takes our results down to 4. And we see right off the bat, trust affecting collaboration and virtual team survey. Maybe I'm more interested in the virtual team effectiveness survey. I'll click on this. So when I get to the detailed record, it's going to provide me with information about that instrument, a description, the year, who publishes it or owns it, and there are 2 fields here that are really, really important. One is the permissions field. So you want to double check that it says may use for research/teaching. If you see this, you don't have to request permission to use this instrument. And you'll probably print this page or PDF this page to include in your dissertation appendix, showing that you have permission to use it. The other field I want to point out here, which is so important, is the source citation. The reason why this is so important is because this is the original article from which the instrument was developed or used, okay? When we find something in APA Psych tests, I'm going to show you right now when we open up the PDF full text, there's no article or context for this instrument. It is simply the instrument itself in full text. No guides, no result, like anything about how to, analyze results, nothing like that. It is just the instrument. So as we scroll down, we will see that full text instrument. So these are the demographics questions. These are the survey items, which are on a Likert scale. And you can see all of those questions there, which is great, but you'll want to look at that original article, right, in order to get more information about how to actually use this, what they used it to measure, etc. And there's that article. You should be able to link out to it here if you're ever in a situation where the full text is not available from the NCU library. You can certainly request that through our free interlibrary loan system. Going back to our databases page, we're going to quickly pop into Cinahl. Cinahl is the cumulative index to nursing and allied health literature. And so just like APA Psych articles and Psych info, in the advanced search field, there is a tests and measures area, I believe. Let's see. I believe there is, but maybe we have to search for that. So let's see here. We have clinical queries. You know what, let's just go ahead and do a search here. So let's say that we're looking for articles about stress and burnout, maybe. Let's go ahead and press search. Okay, so we have our articles here. Let's look at one of the records just to see if there is an instrument field. I thought there was, but I could be thinking of Medline. Yeah, I don't see any there. So we would probably want to, when looking in Cinahl and Medline, you also have the ability to do clinical queries search if you would like to look for that. But let's go ahead and say that we're looking for a survey on stress and burnout. Okay. And I'll click on this first record here. Major subjects. Okay, so this is what I was trying to look for here, the instrumentation field. And they use the Maslach burnout inventory. So this, you would want to look in the full text. You would click link to full text to see if we have that full text in order to see if that full instrument is described or provided in an appendix for that full text. Medline would be something you could also search for along with, you'll want Medline complete, along with Cinahl if you are more geared towards the medical or health, public health fields. And so you could do the same search there looking in Medline and get results from that as well. All right, going back, I'm going to close out some of these tabs so I don't have so many open. And then we'll take a look at our next one here, which is called ERIC. ERIC is an open access database from the Department of Education that provides information on all aspects of education. It includes journal articles, dissertations, books. It does include other resources as well, but the real value here in ERIC is some of their limiters. So let's just say we are looking at, let's see if I have an example here. Yeah, let's say, we'll say online, let's say remote emergency teaching, okay? So I'm going to do a quick search for remote emergency teaching. I have 251 results here. What I really want to show you, if you are an education student, this is so unique. On the left-hand side of the screen, as I scroll down, I have this publication type limiter. That's not the unique part, but the unique part is that there is an actual publication type for tests/questionnaires. So if you are looking for a test questionnaire instrument to maybe measure student or teacher perceptions of a remote emergency teaching during the time of COVID, these articles, which we're now down to 25, should use some sort of instrument, a test questionnaire, survey scale, etc. So that publication type limiter is gold. The other thing is you can scroll down on the screen and there is a separate assessments and surveys limiter, which will flag any specific assessments or surveys that have been established and used by these articles. So this one used positive and negative affect something, it goes on from there. So you would click on that one in order to get to that specific article which used that specific instrument. So I just wanted to quickly demonstrate this because it is highly valuable for education students. The other education-specific database is called ETS Test Link. This is a repository of reviews on commercially available educational tests. So if I click on Search the Test Link database, we'll be able to jump into searching, and I'll again try remote teaching just to see if there is anything here. I can't remember if I've found that. No. Let's do learning style. So maybe you're trying to measure students' learning styles, and then we have all of our results here. So let's say I'm looking at the Barsh learning style inventory. I guess there was a revised version I could have looked at. But these are very brief. This is very succinct information, basically. We have the notes about this inventory, and then you're going to have the URL to access that commercially published test and purchase that test if that is something of interest to you. So just wanted to quickly point this out. Great way to search commercially published educational tests. Next, we'll jump into HOPI. HOPI is the Health and Psychosocial Instruments database. This is one of our newer databases. It's going to look familiar because it is an EBSCO product. And I'm just going to do an advanced search. And let's say that we are looking at, let's see, we'll do stress and burnout, and we'll do the survey again. So notice how I'm searching a little bit broader here, but I knew that I wanted a survey. And there is the Maslow burnout inventory. Some of these may not be available in full text, whereas others are. Here's the Maslow burnout inventory general survey. And if we pop into that record and we scroll down, we'll see the original reference for that. If there's no hyperlink and you have any trouble locating that resource, we can certainly help you with that. And it looks like this source is also associated with the original as well. But I'll pop into that full text so you can see that. So like APA Psych tests, you should be able to see that full text instrument here. Let's see here. Again, if you did not, it could be in the narrative of that article, or you may have to contact that researcher to locate that full text. Moving along, mental measurements in yearbook. Mental measurements yearbook with tests and print. This is a source that allows you to see reviews of let's see. Yeah, I'm just reading that that little description. It allows you to read reviews of commercially published mental measurements instruments. So let's go ahead and jump in there. And we'll do stress, let's see, go into advanced search, stress, and burnout. Okay, so here we have, just as an example, the staff burnout scale for health professionals. And so if we jump into that, we will see that all of that published test information, it tells you even the pricing that is available for that. And then you should be able to locate how to purchase and use that instrument. So I know we're going kind of fast. We aren't going to skip PubMed as well as ScienceDirect and Web of Knowledge, but those are other considerations for finding test instruments as well. So that really covers everything on this page with the exception of PubMed, ScienceDirect, and Web of Knowledge. You can come here for more information and instructions on using those resources. But for the most part, we went through all of these other. These ones are not really specifically targeted for test instruments, but they can be beneficial. So that's why we included these within the library databases section. The last thing I do want to do is close with just doing an open Google search, because while Google can be completely overwhelming at times, it can be beneficial, especially if we already know what test instrument we are interested in. So if we know, for example, we are interested in a specific survey, we can type that survey in here. Let's see. So let's see, as an example, we can try, well, let's just do employee engagement survey. So this provides some commercial, it looks like commercial employee engagement surveys. But if you have a specific instrument names that you are interested in, then go ahead and put those in quotation marks. So if you have an established test instrument like the, let's see, did we use a specific one today that we can take a look at? Let's see. I'll just copy and paste from one of our previous. So if we do the Maslow burnout inventory, this could be a good way to search for either that full text if not available in the library, or if it is commercial, and it does look like this one is commercial, easy way to get to that website. And then you should also be seeing maybe other studies that did use that particular instrument. So these techniques, you obviously won't have to go through all of them since many of them were very subject specific. But if you have any questions for us on what the best method is for you in locating your test instrument, please don't hesitate to reach out to the library via live chat, via Ask a Librarian, or phone. We also provide research consultations for doctoral students at any phase, but especially if you're having trouble with finding that instrument, you can go to our services drop-down menu and click on research consultations to schedule that. Well, I hope that this workshop has been helpful. Like I said, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're always happy to help. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful day.